संस्थापकाय च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे अवतारवरिष्ठाय रामकृष्णाय ते नमः। वसुदेवसुतं देवं कंसचाणूरमर्दनं देवकी परमानन्दं कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुम्। So today we will try to cover from the 16th to the 21st verse of the 5th chapter of Shrimad Bhagavad Gita, where Bhagavan is instructing the process of self-realization, that how we can realize the true nature of our self, that we are identified with our body and with our senses, and all our life is just a projection of this ahamta and mamata, me and mine, which originates from our identification with the body, with the mind, with the senses, thinking it to be the me. How to go beyond that and realize the self, and if we can realize the self, what is the outcome of it, how it finds expression in our life, and what happens after we die. So these are the things which will be highlighted in the verses from 16th to the 21st of the 5th chapter of Shrimad Bhagavad Gita. So with this, let us start with the 16th sloka of the 5th chapter of Shrimad Bhagavad Gita. Jnanena tu tadajnanam yeshang nashitam atmana tesham adittavat jnanam prakashayati tatparam. Jnanena, with jnana, with the knowledge of the self, tu tadajnanam, the ignorance which is the cause of my delusion, you have to erode it. You have to totally annihilate it with the help of the jnana. So jnanena tu tat ajnanam nashitam. So you have to annihilate. So this, to realize the self, atmana. The atman is something which is always with me. It is not something which I have to attain. In Sanskrit, there are two words, prapti and apti. In Bhagavad Gita, you will find in many places the word apti has been used instead of the word prapti. What is prapti? Prapti is apraptasya prapti. Like in our life, I don't have wealth. Through certain procedure, I attain wealth. It was not mine. Through some endeavor, I get it. I get wealth. I get established in some relations. I get name and fame. These were not with me. They were absent as per in my life is concerned, as per their existence in my life is concerned. Through some endeavor, I got them. But attainment of self is not something like that. It is something already within me. Somehow, because of ignorance, I have forgotten about it. In Sanskrit, they speak of chamikar nyaya. Chamikar is a necklace. A lady is wearing a necklace and she is busy with her household work, and most probably it's the winter, and as she has wrapped herself with some woolen shawl. The necklace has got hidden in the woolen shawl, and suddenly she feels the necklace is not there. She just says, "Where is my necklace?" She goes on running hither and thither. "Where is my necklace? Where is my necklace?" And someone then points out, "Wow, what a person you are. It's there. It is just on your neck." And then she fumbles and finds it there. So what has happened? It was there. She was not aware of it. She somehow have forgotten about it. Sri Ramakrishna relates it in a very funny way. What he says, that a person in a village, a villager, was having the habit of having tobacco. So at the dead of night, suddenly he had the urge of having some tobacco. So with a lantern in his hand, he went to the neighbor's house and knocked the door. The neighbor got up and just opened the door and asked, "What is the matter?" And this person told, "You know that I have the habit of taking tobacco and suddenly have this tremendous urge for having it. But can you give me some little fire? Just for little fire I am here." Wow, what a person you are. You are holding the lantern in your hand. And for the fire you have came to my door. So that's the thing. The thing which you are in search of is with me. So that's the thing, this Atmana. How you get it? Just you have to annihilate the ignorance. Jnanena, with the knowledge. Once you annihilate the ignorance, the self shines forth. You need not have to search for it. It is there with you. How it is? Tesham adityavat jnana. It's just like the light. It's just the light of the sun. Aditya is the sun. It is just like the sun. Like ignorance, the cloud was just covering it. They removed the cloud, the sun is already there. It shines forth. Tesham adityavat jnanam prakashayati tatparam. The Supreme Self is revealed the moment with the help of jnana you can annihilate the ignorance. Now what this jnana is? The jnana has two meanings. First it is that I am not aware of the self at present. I hear about the self from the scriptures, from some person who has realized the self. Scriptures are nothing but the revealed words of the realized self. What has been revealed in their life, that's written in the scriptures. So hear the words of the realized soul through the scriptures. And then I have to have Shraddha. It's very important in spiritual life. At the very beginning, I may brush it out. Oh, these are all nonsense. There is nothing called consciousness. With our shallow science, I can understand that it is the interaction of the matter by which somehow the consciousness has evolved. When the scriptures say it is the consciousness alone which is the be-all and end-all of existence. The entire existence is just a projection of that. That consciousness is not an epiphenomenon. It is the phenomenon. The entire existence is an epiphenomenon. The shallow science, I'm showing the shallow science because I'm saying this word shallow because in science, in the present day, there are so many discoveries, inventions and discoveries has happened that they themselves are questioning that is really consciousness an outcome of the interaction of the matter, or is it something which is the fundamental aspect behind the creation? So that's why I'm using the word shallow science, because it's not the entire science which we think of in the present days. There are many books. There are so many ideas. They say most probably our universe is just like an artificial simulation, just the way in the computer you can simulate in the world of virtual reality. Most probably this world is like that, a simulation, because everywhere you find information. It is not something just a dull matter. Even inside the atom, it is packed with information. It's bits. The it from bit, that there's a famous book that I was also going through it presently in the Blinkist. It means this creation is from bit, from the information that came out. It's the idea which is in the science, but with our so-called shallow understanding, we may think it is the interaction of the matter from which the consciousnesses came out. And at the very beginning, we may brush out the idea that consciousness is the fundamental principle behind existence, and I am that. And somehow, because of ignorance, I am not aware of it. I think this body-mind complex to be me, and I get tremendously attached to it. Anything which gives pleasure to it, I feel it is my happiness. When anything which is unpleasurable to it, I think it causes the dissatisfaction, all the unhappiness, the misery. I am so much identified with it. And someone who has realized the self comes and says, no, you're the self. You have to come out of this delusion. And if I don't have faith in the words, then there itself my journey stops. Just like any science. I cannot prove to a small child the high, intricate theorems of science. I cannot. If a small child says that unless you prove it to me, I won't believe it, the child will never learn. It has to go through the stages of his education, through all the primary, secondary, the tertiary education, and at last, when he is sufficiently educated to understand the derivation of all those theorems, then he will really understand the proof of it. But first, he has to believe on the assumptions. And that's what Swami Vivekananda used to say, that in the present day, the scientific superstition is more horrendous than the so-called religious superstition. And he used to say very nicely, he used to say, in the present day, you just say someone that Newton has said this, Einstein had said this, and you won't even need salt to swallow it. Generally, without salt, the food is not tasty. You have to add salt. So he's saying there is no need for salt. They are so much superstitious. If just the word, the Einstein have said it, he will simply swallow it. Darwin has said, he will simply swallow it. But if I say Patanjali has said it, Vyasa has said it, and then immediately all the doubts come. So this he's saying is a scientific superstition. It's also a superstition. That as Einstein has said it, that doesn't mean that I cannot question it. I have to go through that reasoning. So in scripture, there is a scope for reasoning. It doesn't mean that faith doesn't mean that I have to simply believe in it and as a blind faith. No. There's a process. It is called Sravana, Manana, Nididhyasana. I have to hear the words of the scripture, and many things will be beyond my understanding. But I should be humble enough to accept the fact that my understanding is not up to it. I don't question the doubt. I don't question the truth of the scripture. A realized soul is authentic. He came from some realization, came down from some realization, just out of sheer sympathy for the world. He or she, such a person, have no vested interest. Why should he come from that realization and speak some nonsense? There's no need for any gains, for material gains for that person. It is out of sheer compassion he's coming down, speaking the truth. Let me have faith in his word. It may be not very clear to me, but let me have Shraddha, and then that manana starts. What is manana? Cogitating upon the words of the scriptures. You go on contemplating, and gradually you find the cobwebs of your mind are getting cleared off. You are getting some intellectual conviction. And then comes the first hurdle again, another hurdle. When we have some intellectual conviction, immediately we start thinking, oh, I have attained the knowledge. I have understood. But that type of knowledge is just an intellectual conviction. It doesn't help us in the crisis of life. It gives us, to a certain extent, a tranquility when all the situation is good. I'm sitting in the shrine, listening to the words of the scriptures. That as such, for the time being, I have kept aloof all my struggles, tensions, and it gives certain peace of mind. It's good, not bad. But it is just a type of intellectual conviction. When you are going through the crisis of life, you find these are of no avail. That's why many start the spiritual journey and suddenly abruptly stops it, thinking it's not going to help me. When the real crisis is there, it doesn't help me. Many stop there. Why it happens? Swami Vivekananda gives a very nice example. He says very nice that intellectual conviction is not enough unless it becomes our realization. Unless we realize, the truth can never, as such, overhaul our life, transform our life. It cannot. So Swamiji is giving that funny example that a stag was just seeing its own reflection. A male deer, quite muscular enough. His limbs were very muscular. It was standing just by the side of a reservoir and it was seeing its own reflection and it was bragging, just see my strength, how strong I am, how muscular I am. It was bragging to the young fawn, the small deer. And suddenly the stag heard the barking of a dog and it started running, frantically running. It was scared. Just have heard, you have not even seen the dog. You have heard the dog barking, it started running. The fawn ran after the stag. It ran. After a long distance, the stag stopped. It was totally exhausted. It was gasping for breath because it has ran frantically. And now the fawn asked, just now you were so confident about your strength. You were so confident about your this muscles, strength. What happened to it? What made you so much frightened? And the stag replied, I don't know what happens to my confidence when I hear the barking of the dog. So in our life, the crises are like the barking of the dog. The moment we hear it, all our confidence is gone. Why? Because it's just an intellectual conviction. It has not become a realization. What's the difference between the intellectual conviction and realization? Again, let us take an episode in the life of Swami Vivekananda. He is relating it. That once when I, as a wandering monk, I was passing through the deserts of Rajasthan. I was very thirsty. It was very hot and sultry weather. I felt very thirsty and I was in search of water, and then suddenly I saw a huge reservoir at a distance. I started proceeding towards it, and then suddenly I saw it vanished. I was no way nearing it, and then it vanished. And then suddenly the thought came, I have read about the mirage from my childhood. In my books, textbooks, I've read about it. I had the idea that I know what mirage is. I read about it in details. An intellectual conviction was there that what mirage is. Today, for the first time, I realized. I was not aware. First, I took the reservoir to be real. And when it vanished, then suddenly the thought came, oh, this is the thing I have studied in the textbook. And today I have realized it. So this is the difference. And now, what is the difference in its effect, in its outcome? Swami is saying, again the next day I am passing through the desert. Again I am thirsty. Again I am in search of water. Again I see the reservoir at a distance. But today there is a great difference. Yesterday that reservoir dragged me towards it. Today it has lost the power. It cannot drag me. I see the world. I am back in my mind and senses. I see it. But it has lost the power to drag me. So that's the difference. That's the difference between intellectual conviction, just mere knowledge, and realization. So unless we have that realization, we haven't been in our life, that interval has not arrived, where all the projections through the mind and the senses with which we are seeing the world has stopped for the time being. We have gone beyond the mind to really get established in the self. And from that, again, when we come back, now we are a different person. The realization has happened. You have sinned. You have realized the mirage. It's no more intellectual knowledge. And now you are a different person. Nothing can delude you. So jnana, the word jnana here has two meanings. First, that intellectual conviction. That also is jnana. But once I have it, I have to dive deep within. That's the spiritual sadhana. Through the process of meditation, I have to dive deep within. I have to go on cogitating upon that intellectual conviction till it becomes my realization. Today's imagination will become tomorrow's realization. How it happens. So that idea we will try to just highlight in today's discussion. We start with it. That what's the spiritual process? That yes, after having faith in the words of the scripture and after mentally cogitating upon the truths which has been spoken of in the scripture, I have somehow that conviction, yes, I am the Atman, I am the self. Now this Nididhyasana is a meditation on this intellectual conviction. You have to go on cogitating upon this intellectual conviction till it becomes realization. When I say this, immediately you may think, oh, it is just the concretization of imagination. It is just something like a schizophrenic patient. There is nothing, he sees something. So by constant cogitation, I have to hallucinate so that it helps me to get rid of this another hallucinations world. And we will be doing a big mistake. It's not that my imagination is taking a concrete shape. No. What's the actual thing is happening? So when you are constantly cogitating upon the fact, I am the Atman, I am the self. First thing which happens is we resort to neuroplasticity. That in all the spiritual traditions, if you try to find out what is the common thing in all the spiritual traditions, there is something common. The doctrines, the dogmas, the belief system, they're all different. But in spite of all the differences, there is something common. What is the common? The common thing is the practice. In all the tradition you will find, whatever I practice, that has to be repeated. You go to the church, the same prayer they repeat. Go to the Islam tradition, the same prayer they repeat. Come to Hindu tradition, whatever may be your belief. The idea of the divinity, you will find there is theological difference. But the thing which we are doing is the repetition. Why we repeat? Because in all the spiritual traditions it has been found that unless there is an emotional attachment to what you are doing, you can never get that tremendous focus, concentration. It can never happen. Just to give an example, the mother has never have to meditate on the child. Does the mother sit down and meditate on the child that I may forget my child? Why? It never forgets the child, because love is there. Where love is there, meditation is spontaneous. Now when first through intellectual conviction I have the idea of the self, it is just an intellectual conviction. With that I have no sense of emotional attachment. A sense of emotional attachment has to come, and for that you have to practice. Your will, your resolution will gradually get converted into devotion. That's what in all the spiritual tradition it happens. You go on practicing, you create as if a path in your mind, and once the path is created, you start liking it. All our liking has developed that way. A small child doesn't like studies. We are insisting, study, and through the process of insistence, suddenly we find the child has developed this passion for studies. But you do it again and again. You create a path in the mind and you develop a passion for it. All our likings have developed that way. All our likings. So now you gradually do, and then gradually you find it takes time that you have developed a liking for it. Now, very interesting. This love is something which is qualitatively different from all other obsessions. In our life, we have obsessions for so many things. For wealth, for relations, for name and fame. We have obsessions for so many things. But this is a bit different obsession. What? All our likings, all our attachment was dependent on something external, extraneous. As a result, there was always a factor of fear. And with the fear, there was a factor of stress. What is the factor of fear? That till I get it, always that fear is there. I may not get it. And when I get it, again the fear is there. I may lose it. You just see whether it's wealth, whether it's relation, whether your position in life, name, fame. Till I get it, the fear is there. I may not get it. And when I get it, I may lose it. But this is the wealth. Through contemplation, when you develop that love, whether it's the idea of God as a personal form or as the idea of the self, once you develop that liking, that I sit down, I meditate, and I feel a bliss is emanating, this is something which is intrinsic. It is not extraneous. No one can take it away from me. Very nicely, Mirabai in one of his songs has mentioned, Kharche nahi koi, chor na leve, dina dina varat savaya. It doesn't get expended. However you may use it, however, the more you do it, the more the groove in your mind gets deepened. Actually, the more love emanates from it. It's just the opposite. For the worldly things, it gets expended. And here, the more you are absorbed in it, the more love you develop. Kharche nahi koi. Chor na leve. No one can take it away from you. Dina dina varat savaya. It goes on increasing. The more you do. So, this is the thing which speaks of tremendous absorption. And now, as you develop the love, even you will find in Viveka Chudamani, Shankaracharya has defined bhakti. We may say in Jnana there is no bhakti. Then why he has defined bhakti? What he is saying? This Atma Vivechanam, this constantly contemplating on the self is bhakti. Because it do at last get tagged with your emotion. You start liking, and then the real focus comes. Now, first what it has done, your love for this, as it's something intrinsic, you find that there is no loss in it. This love is something which has no stress factor related to it. You never lose it. As a result, what happened? Your natural inclination is to dive deep into this type of meditation, and other things starts falling off because they are all linked with stress. They're all linked with fear. So I never like to be in the stress. So I've created a path where there is no, as such, affliction. It is like a freeway. All other attachments were like going through the traffic road. Lot of cross sections were there. Why cross sections? That because the resource is limited. One job is there, 100 people are applying, one will get it. If you get it, I don't get it. So there is as if passing through the traffic. If you get the green signal, I get the red signal. It's passing through the traffic. And here I have created a path which is in no way in intersection with others. My love for God in no way hampers your love for God. We can all have that universal love for the divine because it's all intrinsic. So you have created a path which is like freeway where there is no junctions. So if I have a freeway, why should I go through the traffic? Why should I go? I will take so the mind gets a natural tendency to traverse through this freeway, and all other desires start falling off. Now we will go to that example of the will. That if I think our personality is like a wheel, which has a hub and which has many spikes. Each spikes are like the desires, innumerable desires we have. And now I have designed one new spike. This practicing the contemplation of the self, a new spike. This spike has the characteristic what? To first as if dissolve all of the spikes. It has taken away all. As Sri Ramakrishna used to say that Anurag is like a tiger. Anurag, this love is like a tiger. Just the way the tiger goes on devouring this as a predator, it goes on devouring the prey. So this is like that tiger which goes on devouring on its prey. What are its prey? All of the small desires. It just simply devours them. But one thing is still there. Whenever I'm saying Aham Brahmasmi, we may say, oh, it is a practice of Advaita. No. All the practice speaks of duality. This is not why. Still the idea, Aham Brahma. I am Brahman. I is one thing, Brahman is one thing. With that sentence I'm somehow linking it with that idea. The idea of duality is still there. So what has happened? That hub of my personality is the ego. That's the limited idea of this personality, that I am this small body-mind complex. That is still there. With that, a new spike has been created, which is saying Aham Brahmasmi. Unless this hub is gone, I am still intact with my idea of limited personality. So now this has to go off. Now this at last also falls off. Why? Because the entire ego is centered on the idea that I am this limited body-mind complex. And now you're hammering it with an idea, I am not this limited body-mind complex. I am the self, which is non-local, which is the only reality, the non-dual reality behind the entire existence. With this, you're hammering the idea of this localized ego. It is just like Kalidasa, sitting on the branch, cutting the same branch. So the ultimate practice is like the practice of Kalidasa. You have created a spike which is linked to the hub. It's the same ego, and you are trying to cut it. Shankaracharya gives a very nice example. The entire spiritual sadhana is like what? Is just like purifying the turgid water, impure water, with the help of camphor. So in the olden days, they used to use camphor. They put the camphor in impure water, and you will find the water is getting cleared. All the impurities get sedimented. And at last, When the water is pure, you won't find the camphor. That also is dissolved in the water. So here also the same thing. This practice at last ends up. It is not that with this idea that contemplation that Aham Brahmasmi is the final step. When it dissolves the ego at last, then you go beyond the mind to realize the self. The self-realization happens when the ego falls off. It's just like the mind, like the prism was there, and the consciousness, like the white light, was falling on it to break into the spectrum of this world of name and form. The ego has fallen off. The mind can stay as long as the ego is. It has fallen off. The spectrum merges with the white light. And then you realize yourself, which is something experienceable, but you cannot speak about it. Avang manasagocharam. It cannot be described, but it's something which can be experienced. It is something which is noetic in the language of the comparative religion. Noetic, you know that you have realized something. But at the same time, it is ineffable. You cannot describe it. It is noetic, but at the same time, ineffable. The one who has realized that, is convinced about it. Nothing can take that conviction away. You will find in all the religious traditions, the mystics have went to that same realization. Sri Ramakrishna used to say, Shekhane shop shealer akra. When you go to that realization, all the fox as if howls in the same manner. In a forest, when one fox howls, all other will be reverberating. They all howl in the same manner. So he said the mystics are like that. They're speaking the same language in all the religion. If you go to the mystics, they all speak of that unitary experience. In Islam, if you go, the Sufis says Anal Haq, and they were persecuted. You know why? Al Haq means the truth, the ultimate truth. And when you say An Al Haq, when you add that An, that means I am the truth. And immediately the so-called those were the orthodox. They started shouting, it is blasphemy. How can you be the God? And they were persecuted. In Christianity, you will find the mystics were persecuted because they also were speaking of that unitary experience. The Meister Eckhart, this Saint Teresa of Avila, they were all persecuted in some way or other because they were speaking of that unitary experience. But nothing can stop them because what you are convinced is something which speaks of your indestructibility, that this body mind may fall off. I am, nothing can affect me. So they were fearless. They were speaking of the truth without any fear. As in the Kathopanishad they have spoken of, that Ubhe Kshatraucha, Ubhe Brahmancha Kshatraucha, Ubhe Bhavati Odana. The Brahmins and the Kshatriyas become the food, and Mrityu becomes Upasechana, which is like spice. What's the idea? When you go to the realization, what holds us back in this society? What keeps us within the norms in this society is the church. The church means the religious body with its do's and don'ts, and the government. And the government with its all rules. These are the things which keeps us within the bond. So this is the Kshatra and the Brahmana. The Brahmana and the Kshatriya. Brahmana is the church and the Kshatriya is the government. They keep us within the norm. But when you go to the realization, these Brahmins and Kshatriyas become your food. Their words in no way can stop you from speaking about your realization. And Mrityu, at last, they may be the cause of your oppression. They may even kill you. But that act of killing becomes upasechana, spice. It is the crucifixion of Jesus, which is the result of the Christianity, entire Christianity for thousands of years. The death becomes spice. It has actually helped. So just see, this is a wonderful word of the Upanishad. Mrityu becomes upasechana. Why? Because nothing can take me away from my conviction. I'm established in the truth. And why I become fearless? Because I know nothing can kill me. This body-mind complex may fall off. I am established in the self. That's the realization. He becomes fearless. That's why in the Upanishad, again and again the word abhi has been used. Abhi, fearless, no fear. That a nice episode has been related by Swamiji in one of his lectures. That is, sadhu constantly in the forest, deep in the forest, he used to always chant, Aham Brahmasmi, Aham Brahmasmi, I am the ultimate truth, I am Brahman. And one day, the villagers could hear from a distance that a lion caught hold of him. It was dragging him to this deep into the forest. And they could hear till the last moment, in his last breath, that chanting was going on, Aham Brahmasmi. Nothing could stop him. Because he has become convinced in that realization. Dhrira Nishchaya. He has become convinced. Gata Samshaya. All the doubt has fallen off. So that's the realization where he gets established. Once the so-called ego falls off. How it has happened? That when ego falls means your ajnana has vanished. The constant contemplation on your intellectual conviction, that is also a jnana. That has taken you to that real jnana, which is the realization. And then all the so-called ignorance falls off. The knowledge shines forth. Nothing can hide it. It was within you. Only the layers of ignorance was covering it. You have removed them through your intellectual conviction, through your sadhana. The jnana, which is your intellectual conviction, nididhyasana on it, has taken you to that samadhi. Samadhi, what it means? That where there is triputi bheda. These words are very important. The scriptures, if you study the Upanishads, you'll find how scientific the words itself speaks the entire philosophy behind it. Triputi bheda. What it means? The triad collapses. It's very interesting that when I am meditating, there is a triad. What's the triad? Dhyana, dhyata, dheya. These three things are distinct. However I may be concentrated, entire world has fallen off, but I know I am meditating. This is the object of meditation, dhya, that is dheya. The one who is meditating is the dhyata, and the process which is connecting these two is dhyana. So this triad is there. This never falls off. However focused you may be, I am aware that I am meditating. At last, when the ego also is dissolved, ego falls off, you become one with the object of meditation. That is called Triputi Bheda, the collapsing of the triad. And that takes you to that realization. And when you go to that realization and you come back, now you're a totally different person. Many will be equating deep sleep with samadhi. No, Swami Vivekananda very nicely have distinguished these two. That a fool goes to the deep sleep, comes back as a fool. But a fool goes to the state of samadhi, comes back as an illumined person. There's a difference. Every day we are going to that deep sleep. Do we come back as a realized soul? No. So this samadhi is something where that triad breaks. It takes you to that realization. What has happened? What's the realization? The truth which was already within you. It was shining. Only the cloud of ignorance was simply covering it. So it falls off. The mula jnana, the real basic causal ignorance, that was the cause of my bondage, from which all other bondages have resulted, that has fallen off, taking you to that ultimate realization. So Brahmakara Vritti breaks the mula jnana to take you to that ultimate realization. The self shines forth. So what's the result out of it? That's in the 17th sloka, it's been spoken of, from 17 to 21st. Tad buddhyas tadatmanas tannishthas tatparayana gacchantya punaravritting jnana nirdhuta kalmasha. The first is, let's see, here the practice is also, in the first line the practice is tad buddhi, tad buddhaya. What it means? That once you are intellectually convinced, that with that conviction you go on meditating. That is tad buddhaya. That you are constantly cogitating upon that. Tadatmana, what it speaks of? Your emotional involvement. You got totally involved in it with devotion. Tat nishtha. It doesn't happen in a day. You have to go on with the practice assiduously. As Swami used to say very nicely, that entire spiritual practice can be defined as 3P. 3P. What are the 3P? Purity, patience, perseverance. Purity speaks of trying to keep your mind in that uplifted thought. That's the purity. You will find it's not easy. Again, it gets distracted. Have patience and perseverance. Try again and again. Try again and again. Again and again. So it's a very gradual process. It doesn't happen in a day. Sometimes no change is noticeable. We may get totally discouraged. But we give the example of a stone lying in the river bed. It's a coarse stone lying in the river bed. In hundreds of years, it becomes something like Shivalinga, smooth. At any time you look at the stone, no change. Water is flowing over all this coarse rock. No change is visible. But the change is happening. In 100 years, or maybe in 200 years, that has become just that as smooth as that Shivalinga. So this constant flow of your thought has to be over that mind, which has its thousands of angularities. This is for that patience is required, perseverance is required. And then, at last, this transformation do happen in the form of realization. So that's why it's spoken of as Tad Buddhi. You have that conviction. Go on meditating upon it. And that meditation should be Tat Atma. Atma here means your total involvement in it. Tat Nishtha. Nishtha speaks of that perseverance. And total parayana, full absorption. Anya Vacha Vimunchata, Upanishad speaks. That forget every other thing. Be totally absorbed in it. Gautam Buddha speaks of a rhinoceros. And when a rhinoceros is running in the forest, it just runs straight. It can never divert. So he says, spiritual practice, be like a rhinoceros. Just, you have seen the target and just chase it. That speaks of parayana. No other deviations. Anya vacha vimunchata. Forget everything else. Be directed on that. When you do that and go to the realization that jnana has dawned in your life, then gachanti apunaravritting. That because of this cycle of avidya, kama, karma, because of ignorance, the desires arise. When I think I am a limited body-mind complex, I try to grasp all the resource from the world to flatter it, to nourish it. That speaks of the desire, kama, and karma. This has resulted in, karma means all the actions. This has resulted in the cycle of birth and death. I am going in this cycle. So here he is saying, you go to a place from where there is no return. You go to a state, gachanti apunaravrittim. This again and again, this repetition of the cycle of birth and death, that stops for you. You go to that state of atyantika mukti at last. Jnana, when jnana nirdhuta kalmasha, when all the kalmasha, all the impurities of your mind in the form of thousands of desires, they have been washed by this jnana, by your constant practice. They have been washed. And at last, you go to that realization from where there is no coming back. So that's the idea which is spoken of in the 17th. The first thing is that once you go to the realization, you immediately become Jivan Mukta. Free even while living. You don't die immediately because your prarabdha will continue. Just that example that what makes us continue in my life even after realization? My desires has fallen off, but still I continue. That without desires, how can I live? It's just like a fan revolving. The fan is revolving and you switch it off. Does it stop immediately? No. Its past momentum will make it revolve for some time. At last it stops. So even when we have realized our switch is off, the switch of desire is off, but the body-mind complex still continues because of its past momentum. It will continue. At last to stop. As long as it is revolving, it is a state of Jivan Mukti. Though the body-mind is continuing, your self has got totally detached from it. Previously you were identified with it, now you are just a witness. You know it is just the body-mind, because of its past momentum, it is flowing. But I am something separate from it. So though you are in the body-mind complex, you are not of it. You are in the water, but the water cannot drench you. As the scripture, even in Gita, it has been spoken of. You become just like a lotus leaf. It is in the water, but water can never touch it, can never drench it. Padma patram ivam bhasa. The water can never touch it. It is though in the water, but water can never drench it. So once you go to that realization, you become Jivan Mukta. And at the moment, the momentum is over. Your body falls off, you die. There is no return. Atyantika Mukti. That's being indicated by the word gachanti apunaravritting. You don't come back again. So once with your knowledge, all your kalmasha, all the impurities have been washed off. So after that, what's been spoken of in the 18th sloka? Samadarshitva. That all the distinctions fall off. That this is pure, this is impure, this is high, this is low. All these distinctions fall off. Everything is just the mere projection of the divine. Isha vasyam idam sarvam yat kincha jagatyam jagat. It is the Lord alone which is pervading the entire universe. As Mahatma Gandhi used to say, that this first sloka of the Isha Upanishad alone can describe the entire Vedantic philosophy. It is the Lord which is pervading the entire creation. Isha vasyam idam sarvam yat kincha jagatyam jagat. So that's the idea which has been spoken of in the 18th verse. What it is saying? Vidya vinaya sampanne brahmane gavihastini shuni chaiva swapakecha pandita samadarshina. This samadarshitva, that's the first sign, one of the signs of a realized soul. For a realized soul, there is no hierarchy in love. As Holy Mother used to say, Sharat is my son. Sharat is a realized soul, the disciple of Ramakrishna. Holy Mother's attendant, always there to serve Holy Mother. Sri Ramakrishna, always deep in his own meditation. He is an exalted soul. And Amjad comes to Mother, but Mother knows now and then he will be absent for quite a long time. Why? He is in jail. Because now and then he will be just stealing things, will be get caught, and he will be in jail. It used to happen when after a long time, once Amjad came to Mother and Mother asked, what happened? Why were you not here? He told, oh, I was in jail. And Mother, oh, acha, that's why. Now I realize that why you couldn't come here. So that was the only reaction. That she never told, oh, why have you were in jail? What all misdeeds you have done? Nothing. Oh, acha, you were in jail. Oh, that's why you couldn't come. So that was the only reaction. So, and then he was fed. He was given a small place to sleep. He will give her, he was always having headache. So Mother will always give some food and then some oil to cool down his head and with nice place to sleep. And then with full satisfaction, he will go back. So this is Amjad. So for Holy Mother, there is no hierarchy. Sharat is also his son. Amjad is also his son. That all the idea of biological attachment falls off. As a human being, we have that uniqueness. I need not be the mother of only my biological child. I can be the mother of all if I can go to that realization. It's the same self which is pervading the entire universe. And that's the idea. Vidya Vinaya Sampanne Brahmane. What is a Brahmana? One who is endowed with knowledge, Vidya, and Vinaya. With the knowledge comes humility. So one who is endowed with knowledge and humility, such as a Brahmana. So the one who sees a Brahmana, a Brahmin, who is endowed with knowledge and humility, and a Gavi means a cow, Hastini means an elephant, Shuni means a dog, Swapaka means a dog eater. In the olden days, even we know now there are certain places where people take dog's meat. And in the olden days, the so-called the lowest category means rung of the society, the Chandalas, the Shudras, they used to take the meat of the dog. And that's why Swapaka means the dog eaters. One who is in the lowest rung of the so-called social hierarchy. So for all of them, the one who is Pandita. The word Pandita means the one who has the knowledge of Panda. Panda in Sanskrit means Atman. So Pandita means the one who has the knowledge of the self. So the real Pandita is the one who has the knowledge of the self. He is Samadarshi. He sees with same-sightedness what the most exalted Brahmin is not by birth, one who is Vidya Vinaya Sampanna. one who has real knowledge, and that knowledge has begotten humility. So he's an exalted person. He or any other creatures, cow, elephant, dog, and the one who is in the lowest rung of the society, the swapaka, for all is the same sightedness. From where it came? In the realization, the prism has fallen off. The mind was dissolved. The spectrum, this entire creation of name and form is the spectrum that merged with the white light. And when again it falls on the prism to break into this spectrum, now he has once gone to that realization. He knows this is after all the projection of that same reality, the white light, the consciousness. Now as a spectrum, it may have various layers of existence, but it is all the projection of the self and the self alone. It is the self alone which is being projected as this universe of name and form. So there is no distinction for him. All the distinction has fallen off. He has gone beyond all these distinctions. So this is the sign of a realized soul. So that's been spoken of in this sloka, the Samadarshitva. Then the 19th sloka, what it says? It speaks of tranquility, samya. Nothing can perturb him. In the scripture, they speak of the anvil of the blacksmith. The blacksmith will be constantly hammering over that. It in no way is affected. So realized soul is like that, the anvil of the blacksmith. The life may go on hammering on it. It is in no way affected. Sukha, dukkha, pleasure and the misery, nothing can affect. It is always equipoised. It's in tranquil. That's what's the idea? Ihaiva tairijita sargo yeshang samye sthitang mana. That one who has transcended this so-called the world of relative existence. In this world of relative existence, what has happened? The moment the conscious principle gets associated with the body-mind complex, it becomes klishta. This word klishta means what? Klesha. What is that? Avidya, asmita, raga, dvesha, abhinivesha. These are the pancha klesha. Because of ignorance comes asmita, that sense of me and mine. From that comes raga, dvesha, abhinivesha. What to speak of human being? Just take a small microbe. In a petri dish, through the microscope I am looking, it appears that there are some randomly moving particles. It appears as if they are all inanimate. And the teacher comes and says, no, they have life. You want to see how they have life? And he puts a drop of nutrient in the center of the petri dish and now look through the microscope. You will find that the so-called randomly moving particles have gathered direction. They're all moving towards it. Oh, now I understand. These are small microbes. What has happened? The conscious principle got associated with that microbe body, that small body, and now it has started thinking, I am it. And with that, the idea came that something behind is saying, you're eternal. It's just like I'm standing in front of the mountain, I'm shouting my name, and my name is echoed back, and I feel someone is calling me from the mountains. So similarly, the self is saying, I am eternal. In that micro body, that echo is coming, I am eternal. And it gets diluted. If I am eternal, I have to realize this eternity in this micro body. That's why if you give some nutrient, this will nourish it. It gets drawn towards it. If you give some toxin, it will annihilate, but I am eternal, I cannot die. It will run away from it. So this raga, dvesha, abhinivesha, fear of death, everything has arisen because of asmita, or attachment to this limited body-mind complex. But I am after all the self. So this, when I am established with the idea that I am the self, asmita has fallen off, and its association with all the so-called pleasures and miseries of life also has fallen off. Because after all, it has to do with that asmita, with the sense of ego, not with the self. Nothing can harm the self. Nothing can nourish the self. It is always fulfilled. So one who has got established in it, for him, all the dualities are bound to fall off. And that's the thing which has been spoken of here. Ihaiva tairijita sarga. You have transcended the relative existence. Yeshang samye sthitang mana. His mind is always equipoised. As we give the example of the ocean, all the waves are in the shore. The more you go into the deep water, it is calm. So the real self is calm, shamya. all this turbulence is just in the shore of our existence. So once you can dive deep, it is all equipoise. And one whose mind is established in that equipoise, he has transcended this so-called world of relative existence. Taijita sargo. Nirdosham hi samam Brahma. The Brahma, the ultimate reality is Nirdosha and Sama. It is tranquil and it is beyond the world of this relative existence. It is beyond the Pancha Klesha. It is Kushala. The word Kushala, it's a Sanskrit word, sometimes even we don't know the real meaning. Kushala means good. Why it is good? In Sanskrit, Kushala, the word came from Dagdha Klesha is Kushala. The one who has burned the Klesha, the afflictions in the form of Raga, Dvesha, Vinivesha, in the form of attachment, hatred and fear. They will find that all our actions are because of these three. Either we are obsessed by something or the fight and flight response is working. These are the three things. The fight and flight response or attachment. This has fallen off. So why he has fallen off? Because he is now established in his self. It's not that external so-called turbulences have stopped. They are there. The world with all its turbulences are there. But he is not attached to it. He is not identified to it. He is always just the witness. He is no more in the stream. He is in the bank of the stream watching the flow. And that's the thing is being spoken of here. Ihaiva Tajita means to transcend. Sargo, this world of relative existence. Yeshang Samya Sthitang Mana. From where he got that sthiti? From his established in the self who is Nirdosha, who is beyond all afflictions, and who is always in equipoise, which is always tranquil. Samya. Nirdosham hi samam Brahma, tasmat Brahmani te sthita. So just as he is tranquil, and I know the real self is tranquil, so I can equate that as I cannot see Brahman, but from the effect I can say that Brahman is tranquil, it is beyond all so-called relative existence, and a person who has realized the self, I find he is tranquil, he is beyond all so-called relative existence, so he is established in Brahman. So that's how indirectly it is called Tatastha Lakshana. That suppose I am sitting in my house, a guest came, and I just tell to my guest that actually our house is very near the river, and the guest looks out, where is the river? I cannot see the river. And you say, you see that tall tree? Just by the side of the tree is the river. From here the river is not visible, but just by the side of the tree. So this is called by the bank of that tree is the river. So though I cannot see the river, but by seeing the tree I can indicate where the river is. So it is called Tatastha. Tata means by the bank. Tata in Sanskrit is bank. Tatastha Lakshana. So similarly here, I can never speak of Brahman, but I see a person in a state who is tranquil, who is in no way disturbed by the so-called turbulences of life. It is only possible if you are established in Brahman. Though Brahman is not something which can be perceived, the ultimate subject can never be perceived, so you never perceive it. But seeing your state of existence, I know that you are just near it. Tatastha, you are established in it. So that's been spoken of here. Ihaiva Tajita Sargo, Yeshang Samya Sthitang Mana, Nirdosham hi samam Brahma, Tasmat Brahmani te sthita. Now, immediately the idea will come, oh, at last, our spiritual practice has made us a veggie, isn't it? If you just have a cabbage, you put a knife, no reaction. So at last I become like a veggie. So to again interact that, to just counteract that, the next sloka speaks of, it's not that you are just simply an inert matter. Inwardly, you are enjoying perpetual bliss, ineffable bliss. That speaks that rock doesn't have a bliss, but a realized soul, externally he may appear as an inert. Inwardly, he is in the perpetual bliss. And that's being, that is in the 21st. The 20th sloka is just an extension of the 19th. What it is saying? Na prahishyat priyang prapya. He doesn't get delighted by getting something pleasurable. Nod vijet chap prapya apriyam. And he's never at morose when he, is in association with something which is not pleasurable. Sthira buddhim asang mura brahmavid brahmani sthita. So that's the same thing, that idea which we were explaining in this previous sloka. That as he is established in the self, he is in no way perturbed by the dualities of life in the form of sorrow and happiness, pleasure and unpleasant things. He is beyond that. He has become aklishta. And then that he is not something inert. That's been spoken of in the 21st sloka. What he is saying? Bahya sparsheshva saktatma vindati atmani yat sukham sa brahma yoga yuktatma sukham akshayam ashnute. Akshaya sukha. That our sukha is not akshaya. Constantly that we go to the happiness just for a moment. Sri Ramakrishna used to say very nicely, our happiness is just like the water falling on a red hot pan. On a cauldron, in an oven, a pan is there, it is warm, it is very hot, and you just pour a little water on it. What happens? Immediately the water evaporates. So as long as the water stays on that hot pan, so is our happiness. That's what Sri Ramakrishna in the Gospel is indicating. So, but here they are speaking that when you go to that realization, as per the external world is concerned, I am not in any way affected by it. But that doesn't speak I have went to a state of in this vegetation. I am not a veggie. I am not in some, what you say, that state of coma. I am inwardly in a tremendous perpetual bliss. That is Sukham Akshayam Asnute. By the one who has severed his contact with the external world. Bahya Sparsheshu Asaktatma. That was cut off his attachment to the Bahya Sparsha. But touch, all the pleasures which I get in association with the senses, sense enjoyments. There's with the contact, they're all contact born. With the eyes, I'm seeing. With the ears, I'm hearing. Everything is contact born. With the skin, I'm touching. With the nose, I'm smelling. With the tongue, I'm tasting. Without contact, there's no pleasure. So all these pleasures are born out of contact, the sense pleasures. So one who has gone beyond that. How he has gone beyond that? Vindati Atmani. By realizing this Atman. From that perpetual bliss comes. Yat Sukham. The happiness that comes from that is the happiness of one's association with the Brahman. Brahma Yoga Yuktatma. One is in association with Brahman. And that is, what's its nature? Sukham Akshayam Asnute. The happiness is something which is perpetual, which never ends. It is something, in our scriptures they speak of, that happiness as Taila Dharavat. It's just like the flow of oil. When you're pouring oil from one vessel to the other, because of its viscosity, there is no interruption. It's a constant flow. The happiness is something like that. Why? That from, what's the idea behind it? That actually in all the sense pleasures, when we get the happiness comes from the self. Know it for certain. This world doesn't have the capacity to give you even a small tidbit of smell, this happiness, a smell of happiness. Shankaracharya in one of the slokas in Bhagavad Gita speaks of that idea, that this world, there is no happiness in this world. Gandha matra pina vindyate. That sukham gandha matra, a smell of happiness is not there. Then but we say that this world gives us happiness. No. If you really try to find out the nature of happiness, you will find the world never gives you happiness. Never. It is not the desire which gives us happiness, not the fulfillment of the desire. It is a desirelessness which gives us happiness. You know how? So when there is a tremendous desire in your mind for anything, what is happening? The mind is breaking into waves. Swami Vivekananda's this example is wonderful. He says that our mind is just like a lake. The waves are like the thoughts and the desires. And our real self is something like the bottom of the lake. Now, when you will find the lake is calm, I can see as if the bottom of the lake. If you go to the Rishikesh and Haridwar, where the water is very transparent, you can see the fish swimming inside the water. It's so clean. So when the water is calm, no wave, you can see as if the bottom of the lake. But when it breaks into waves, I cannot see the bottom. So real nature is like the bottom of the lake. It is Sat Chit Ananda Swarupa. What is Sat Swarupa? Which speaks of my eternity. That which is, whose existence is not interrupted by any phase of time, past, present and future. That is Sat. Trikal Avadhita Satya. So my real self is eternal. That is Sat Swarup. And then you may say, oh, is it inert something? Because sometimes we may feel that matter and energy is interconvertible. Somehow that has conglomerated to form consciousness. So as matter or as energy, I'm indestructible. So to contend to that fact, to just simply deny that, he's saying, no, you're Chit Swarupa. Your awareness, that ultimate reality which is Sat Swarupa is awareness, is Chit. And then again we may think, oh, most probably we are always in this wave of happiness and dejection. To counteract to that fact, he says, no, you're eternally in bliss, Ananda Swarupa. Then why don't we realize it? What's happening in our life is, Swami is saying that it is question of selective filtration. That I am always aware I am, but the happiness is not there. I am aware of my Sat Swarupata, I am aware of my Chit Swarupata, that I am aware of that. But when the waves of mind are there, thousands of desires are there, Ananda Swarupata, that bliss factor gets filtered out. When I am desiring something, I am not at peace with myself. But the moment the desire is fulfilled, I am at peace with myself. So what happens? That when I have thousands of desires, of that one desire is paramount. That now shadows all of the desire. All desires get abated. One desire is in my mind. That's what happens whenever we are having intense desire. And now when it gets fulfilled, for the time being, the mind is calm. There's no desire. For the time being, I want this. I want this latest model of the car. I want to buy this property. The moment you get it, tremendous happiness. What has happened? For the time being, there is no desire. The happiness is not coming from outside. That's how we are deluded. We think this is giving us happiness. No. It is the tranquility of your mind which is enabling the Ananda Swarupata, which is of yourself, to percolate through your body, mind, senses. It is welling up. In what is welling up? If you just pump out the water from a well, the next day you will find the water is full again. From where it came? The water was there in the underground. It is already there. You need not have to again fill in. So the happiness, something wells up. It is already there within. The mind was the filtering factor with all its desires. The moment it becomes calm, the happiness wells up. Again a new desire comes. Happiness is gone. Constantly that's happening. Why it's happening? Because of ignorance. I think the external world is waiting there to give me happiness. I never understand it is the self alone which is Ananda Swarupa. The world has no power to give me happiness. Gandha matramapi. No, nothing. All the happiness comes from the self. The one who has realized that, he won't be going chasing after the desires. Simply remains tranquil. Inert to the external worlds, enjoying the perpetual bliss from within. And that's why, why the sannyasis are called Maharaj. Sannyasis are called Maharaj. Many people, a few days back, one was asking, Maharaj means the king of kings. And you have no property, no such bank balance, everything is organizations, you have nothing. Then why you are called Maharaj? So the idea is wonderful. That the real richness, what it speaks of, why I have wealth, so that I can be beyond all wants, isn't it? That's why I have wealth. But we will find with all our wealth, our want is still there. Even if you go to Bill Gates, he will say, I want this, I want that. That it is not the wealth which you have which speaks of your going beyond want. It's a type of realization. The one who has realized he is the self, he's always at bliss with himself. There is no want for him. So he has gone beyond all wants. So he may have nothing, but as he has gone beyond all wants, so he is the richest person. If the richness speaks of going beyond all wants, then it's not the wealth which speaks of your happiness. It is the going beyond all wants. He speaks of your real happiness, speaks of your sufficiency. And that's why they are called Maharaj. So there are many stories that we find that a king saw a fakir. It's in the gospel. A recluse. And seeing that recluse, he felt like inviting him to his palace. And the recluse told, I'm quite happy here. I don't feel like going to your palace. But as the king insisted, at last the fakir agreed and went to the palace. And after going to the palace, he found that the king has a small shrine where he he was resorted to some prayer. He was praying, "Oh God, give me more wealth, give me more territory." He was praying. And when he heard this fakir, this recluse heard this emperor praying that way, he, after a lot of insistence, he agreed to come to the palace. Now he started going away again. He was leaving. And the king saw that the fakir is leaving without accepting any gift from him. He actually brought him to give him some gift. And the king asked, "Why are you going? I am yet to give you the gifts." And then this recluse told, "I never beg from a beggar. I never beg from a beggar." You are a beggar after all. So that's the idea, that when you are established in the self, you know that this external world can give you no happiness. All happiness is from within. And it is only when the mind gets calm, samya, then that happiness wells up. Otherwise it is filtered out. So that's what the wise man is doing. He is shanta. He is not in any way perturbed by the external world. He is always established in his self. And that the bliss which is momentary for us becomes something unending, unceasing, perpetual. Because the filtering factor has fallen off. And that's being spoken of. Sukham akshayam. Akshayam means that which never ends, that which never perishes. Ashnute realizes that. So it's not the state of, though outwardly he may look like a veggie, inwardly he is in tremendous joy. That joy is something which cannot be compared to any joy, because that's the source of all joy, where he has got established. And that's the state of a person who has realized the self. And that's the outcome. So as per the necessity is concerned, as per the utility is concerned, what can be the more utility than that, to be in that state of perpetual bliss. So that's what has been spoken of in the 21st sloka. With this we stop our discussion today, and we will continue with the remaining slokas of these chapters again in the next class. So thank you all. Namaskars.